1980, FIFA was one of the most popular, beloved, and trusted organizations in the world. In 2022, FIFA is one of the most corrupt, criminal, and hated organizations in the world, with dozens of FIFA executives arrested for fraud, racketeering, and money laundering. And now huge protests are erupting over the world in regards to the 2022 World Cup, which raises the question, how did FIFA's reputation fall so dramatically? I mean, FIFA used to be one of the most trustworthy and well-respected names in sports. Their patronage of the World Cup had gained them hundreds of millions of fans. Everyone around the world loved FIFA. Their name was synonymous with the most popular sport game in the world. FIFA was football, but that's the key word, was. And we're going to outline every single mistake they've made, which has led up to the most controversial World Cup in history, answering how FIFA transitioned from just a simple football organization to becoming one of the most corrupt political organizations with more power than governments. And
hey there everyone, thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to be discussing about the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Even if you're not really into sports, there's absolutely no way your social media, your friends, your family is not talking about the World Cup. It's one of the biggest events on earth. Billions of people watch it. And it's going to be going on pretty much until just before Christmas, December 17, 18 over there should be the final. So there's going to be a lot of football being played between now and December 17, 18. But what this video is going to be talking about today is going to be discussing the virtue signaling that's going around the World Cup. Virtue signaling. Well, the Oxford Dictionary definition of virtue signaling is the action or practice of publicly expressing opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character or the moral correctness of one's position on a particular issue. That's basically Oxford Dictionary, that's the definition. So, virtue signaling. The virtue signaling that's happening at the World Cup is why I made this video today. And you're going to see why as we go along in this video. Let's continue.
So FIFA held massive amounts of power over the world. The political games from a World Cup were immense, and almost every country were throwing their hats in the ring. The UK, Japan, the USA, South Korea, the list just goes on. All the world leaders would be actively involved in voting for the next host country. And in 2010, FIFA was looking absolutely rock solid. The 2010 World Cup in South Africa had been met with wide acclaim, and FIFA had been making a killing from selling the rights and merchandise. And this tournament only built on the work that FIFA had been doing for years.
I remember when this announcement was made back in 2010. I remember I was in school. The World Cup had just happened in South Africa. All was hunky-dory. And then I remember when I saw what you call Qatar get the World Cup. Honestly, to be fair, I really didn't know where Qatar was. So I literally had to Google and say, okay, where's Qatar? And then I checked Qatar. When it came as a footballing nation, they weren't there at all. Like, I was actually wondering to myself, all the way back in 2010, I'm like, okay, why did they get the World Cup? And they're going to go into more detail later on in the video. And that's
until just a few months after the 2010 World Cup, when FIFA surprised everyone after their decision to give the 2018 World Cup to Russia and the 2022 World Cup to Qatar. Now, giving the World Cup to Russia was understandable, but still a little bit controversial. But after all, Russia has had a long history of football and has competed in the World Cup many times before. However, with the allegations made against FIFA in 2006, rumors were swirling about Russian oil and gas money playing a role in this decision. But it was Qatar that caused the real problem for FIFA, because Qatar, a country with no history of football or any relation to the game whatsoever, was chose to host. I mean, FIFA even laid out why Qatar was a bad choice in their own documents for hosting the World Cup. They couldn't find a single strong reason why they should host the Cup, but suspiciously, FIFA voted in the majority to pick them, despite the massive problems involved, with the most obvious problem being the climate. Qatar, as a Middle Eastern country, is generally hot and dry, and in the summer, Qatar's temperatures often rise above 75 degrees or 115 Fahrenheit. And considering how
So we have evidence of FIFA being extremely corrupt, taking bribes, voting for a country that already didn't have the infrastructure to host the World Cup, and even FIFA themselves not being able to justify why Qatar should have the World Cup. And as you saw over there, people are saying, let's boycott Qatar and everything. And FIFA had pretty much every reason to change course, but they didn't. And as you can see, Qatar coerced and threatened journalists, coerced and threatened the lady, that the whistleblower, but nothing changed. Nothing changed.
And so everyone was questioning why Qatar got the World Cup, and eventually the truth came out: corruption. But But at the time, no one could really prove anything, so critics were reduced to guesswork. There was all rumours, but no actual hard proof. That wasn't until 1 year later, when a whistleblower came forward with information that threatened to collapse FIFA's rotten empire. The whistleblower, a member of Qatar's bid team for the World Cup, claimed that two powerful men on the FIFA Executive Committee had taken bribes totaling $1.5 million from Qatar. The deal had been that for this money, they would vote for Qatar to win the bid. As simple as that. The allegations seemed credible and the public outrage was growing, with renewed cries to reverse the 2022 decision. But surprisingly, just 2 months later, the whistleblower took back all the claims she had made, completely randomly. And by doing this, the whole controversy muddied the water, and it made it so much harder to tell what was going on. And because of this, it was mostly swept under the rug again. Although 3 years later, and the same whistleblower revealed that she had been coerced and threatened by Qatar to renounce the allegations. But by then, it was too late, and FIFA got to conceal their shady deals, at least for a time.
And that's why we're currently having the World Cup right now. Usually the World Cup happens between June and July. It usually happens a month after most of the major European leagues finish. So if we were to have the World Cup this year during the usual slot, it was going to have already happened in June to July so that it doesn't interrupt the domestic leagues.
But despite all of the corruption, the 2022 World Cup still went ahead. All that needed to happen was for Qatar to build the stadiums and open their gates to the world. They needed to put their $220 billion to work, and as they had no football infrastructure, it was time to build from scratch. And this would irreversibly damage FIFA's reputation. Because you see, to build these stadiums and to do all these menial tasks, Qatar needed a lot of workers, and to source this, they used immigrants, enticing them with promises of good money and a steady job. Qatar brought millions of people to the country, but when they got to Qatar, their passports were confiscated and they were forced to work in awful conditions for little to no pay. And in total, 6,500 migrant workers have died building Qatar stadiums and infrastructure. All of this happened because of FIFA's corruption.
There's been great controversy regarding the migrant workers' deaths. As you saw in the video, 6,500 people died building these stadiums. But you find most people, now that the football is actually going on, they're not talking about it as much. The focus is mostly just on the football. The reason why I say this is now virtue signaling, you find that before the FIFA World Cup, you found people were discussing the human rights abuses and the way migrant workers were being treated and literally basically being slaves, like their passports got taken. If the world truly wanted to make a difference instead of virtue signaling, don't go to the World Cup. Country should have just boycotted. Imagine a World Cup where you find the major nations: Brazil, France, Spain, England, Portugal, Germany, Argentina, Nigeria, Senegal. Imagine all these countries said, no, we're not participating in this World Cup. We're not. No one's going to watch, because the reason we watch is because we want to see the best players on the best stage and the biggest stage. But no, despite all the evidence, all the corruption, all the deaths and everything, now it's just about the football. Because at the end of the day, people only care about morals when money's not involved. That's it. But when you actually threaten someone's bank account, morals go out the window.
We're talking about the most corrupt World Cup in FIFA history. Instead, it was all based around other scandals and bribes. It took until 4 years until people realized how truly corrupt the Qatar World Cup was. And that was in 2019, when former UEFA president Michael Platini was arrested by French police after a 2-year investigation into bribery in the Qatar World Cup bid. And the corruption went seriously deep, going deep into the French government, with the French president being actively involved. With leaks showing that the French government went into negotiations with Qatar officials, who were buying up key French assets like PSG during France's economic downturn, all in exchange for the French government to force FIFA to vote for Qatar.
That's how deep the corruption goes. FIFA is getting presidents. Nicolas Sarkozy, when he used to be the president of France, he literally forced Michel Platini, basically the French representative on the FIFA board, to vote for Qatar to host the World Cup. This is way back in 2010. That's how deep the corruption goes. We have evidence of all of this. PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, one of the biggest clubs in the world right now, having Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe, Neymar, one of the most rich clubs on earth. The only reason they are why they are is because Nicolas Sarkozy was a PSG fan. And PSG was going through a financial crisis. And Nicolas Sarkozy said, okay, we're going to vote for you to host the World Cup, but in return, you're going to buy Qatar and you're going to prop Qatar up to host the World Cup. We have all this evidence. We have all this information about this corruption, but nothing is being done about it. Nothing's being done about it because at the end of the day, money talks. That's why for me, when I see all this virtue signaling that's happening regarding the World Cup, I'm like, no, you don't really mean that. You're only doing it because it makes you look good. When you find that people are so outraged that say, oh, look, Qatar is anti-LGBT. That's horrible and whatever. But in reality, you're still there. You're still giving them your money. You're still giving them the publicity. You're still
glimpse into how Qatar had actually played the system. Now, whilst the truth is still murky, according to leaked documents, the Qatari media company Al Jazeera offered FIFA $400 million for broadcasting rights to the 2022 World Cup, just weeks before the vote. But they also secretly promised an extra $100 million if Qatar won the vote as an extra incentive. Qatar's government added another $480 million to the deal, meaning FIFA stood to gain nearly $1 billion by voting for Qatar. And when you think this is bad enough, the flow of scandals coming out of FIFA hasn't even stopped. In 2021, Swiss banker Julius Baer admitted to laundering over $36 million in bribes gained from FIFA and other football officials. And unfortunately, there's no happy ending to this. And because of this, FIFA's reputation is devastated. Although having said this, there is absolutely no justice. FIFA still has a monopoly, and the guilty parties pay back only a portion of their ill-gotten gains. Nearly all of the perpetrators were spared jail time. In fact, the real criminal acts behind FIFA will never truly be known, and Qatar will continue to host the most controversial World Cup of all time. And despite the mountains of evidence pointing to vote fixing and corruption, it will all go ahead as planned, with FIFA once again using the World Cup as the perfect propaganda tool to promote the Qatari regime, with the only real loss in this whole debacle being FIFA's strong reputation, because by now, almost everyone is aware of how truly corrupt FIFA has become in the last decade.
You find that you go there. For example, England before their first match with Iran, they said that they were going to wear an armband that says One Love in in solidarity with the LGBT community. But when FIFA, the day before, said that if England come out and wear those armbands, they would forfeit the game, and if the captain Harry Kane wore the armband, you're going to start the game with the yellow card. So England were not about to jeopardize their World Cup campaign to stand in solidarity with the LGBT community and risk fines. So they removed the armbands, they played the game as follows, and then they just kind of swept it under the rug. They're now just continuing on with the football. Same thing with Germany. The German captain Manuel Neuer was about to wear the One Love armband, but he didn't, because the same thing was about to happen to him. So in exchange, they did a team photo where they covered their mouths in solidarity with the migrant workers that were killed and being administered to purely inhumane conditions. But they were still there, they were still playing. That's my problem when it comes to virtue signaling. Virtue signaling, you're not doing anything. It's basically just like, oh look, I stand in solidarity with you. But do you really? Do you really? If you truly stood in solidarity with these workers, if you want to hit someone where it hurts, what most of these companies like FIFA and everything care about, it's money. If the major countries and all these people that say, look, we don't agree with your human rights abuses, we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that, if you really want to take a stand, don't come, don't attend, don't show up. Because now when you actually do that, Qatar will actually be forced, because they know that for them to have spent over $220 billion building all these stadiums, and these countries actually don't attend, and these countries actually say, no, we're not going to come, that's going to be devastating for their bottom line. But they knew that, hey, look, as soon as the chance for to win the World Cup presents itself to these countries, they're going to drop these human rights violations, they're going to drop these virtue signaling, anti-LGBT, they're going to drop all of this, and they're going to come and they're going to play football, and the football is going to be the focus, which is exactly what's the case. So it really falls on deaf ears for me personally, when you're actually at the tournament saying, oh, I'm going to wear an armband, oh, I'm going to wear a shirt, but you're already there, you've given them their money, they don't care. Like, think about it. If you buy a product and then you go and destroy that product, do you think the person that made that product cares? They already have your money. That's it. If you truly want to hurt the person that made that product that you don't like, don't buy it. Because the only way these people care about human rights or people's well-beings, it's money. That's it. That's why for me, when I see these companies saying, "Oh, we stand in solidarity," like honestly, if we're being honest, they do not care about the people involved. They only do it because it makes themselves look good and because it makes them money. That's it. You think that these companies care? These companies will jump on any trend that makes them money. So when you find companies like FIFA, or what you call organizations like FIFA and the Qatar World Cup, you find that everyone is busy talking a big game about, "Oh, look at me, I can stand in solidarity with the migrant workers." But then in reality, they're really not doing much. They truly aren't doing much. It's just for show. And that's why for me, virtue signaling, I really dislike virtue signaling, because I'm like, you're showing as if you do support me, but you're not actually doing anything about it. Virtue signaling to me is as good as doing nothing at all. If you truly want to make a difference, which that ship has already sailed regarding this World Cup. If you truly want to make a difference, don't show up to the World Cup. That would have been a statement. All these countries saying, "Okay, no, the World Cup is meant to happen. No, we're going to skip this." But they realize at the end of the day that, look, we're not going to jeopardize not potentially winning the World Cup this time when it could be our year. We're not going to jeopardize the money. We're not going to jeopardize the opportunity. So, okay, we're going to show solidarity, but we're not actually going to do anything about it. And that's why virtue signaling is basically pointless in my eyes. The only way you make a difference is with attacking their wallet. Everyone has morals until money is involved.